The cold winds were louder than ever the day Robb Stark rode to the twins. He looked around, knowing every eye was watching him. This wasn't just a visit. It was a promise, fulfilled. Walder Frey had many sons and many daughters, but Robb didn't know which one would become his bride. It didn't matter. Honor was a Stark thing, and he would carry it even if it broke his heart. Talisa Maega, the woman Robb had truly fallen in love with, was gone now. Gone from his side, not by death, but by choice. When the War Council reminded Robb of his oath, and how the North needed allies, Talisa had stepped back. She had seen the truth. Her presence would ruin everything. They had shared a quiet goodbye, no tears, just pain in the silence. It was a sacrifice both of them made for a kingdom that demanded everything. At the twins, Lord Walder Frey greeted Robb with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You've come, King in the North," he said, voice dripping with mockery. "Let's see if my daughter pleases your royal tastes." Robb clenched his jaw but said nothing. He had prepared himself for this. The girl chosen was Roslyn Frey, a quiet girl with kind eyes and soft hands. She looked as nervous as he felt. During the small moments before the ceremony, Robb tried speaking to her. She barely looked up, but he noticed how her fingers trembled when she held the wine cup. "I'll be a good husband," he said softly. "You don't have to be afraid." And for once she looked him in the eyes and nodded. The wedding itself was grand in its own awkward way. Walder Frey spared no feast, no song. It was loud, messy, full of rough laughter and slurred speeches, but it was also peaceful. No knives, in the dark, no betrayal. Catelyn Stark stood nearby, watching everything with suspicious eyes. She couldn't trust the Freys, not fully, but she couldn't deny that the insult had been mended. And when Walder Frey announced the marriage with a smug clap of hands, he said, "Now we're kin, and kin don't betray each other. Unless they deserve it." Robb took Roslyn's hand and kissed her gently. She smiled for the first time. That night, while the feast raged on, Robb sat in his chambers beside Roslyn. She was quiet, folding and unfolding the corner of her gown. "You didn't want this," she said softly. "You loved another." Robb looked down. "I did," he admitted. "But that's over now. I will honor you and protect you. That's my vow." Roslyn blinked fast, surprised maybe. Then she whispered, "Thank you." And just like that, the night passed without blood. No crossbows hidden in the rafters. No betrayal. The North still had its king, and House Frey had their tie to royalty. Word of the wedding reached the ears of enemies and allies both. Roose Bolton, sitting in Harrenhal, frowned at the news. His own ambitions had rested on a certain betrayal, one that now seemed far less likely. "Damn Frey," he muttered. He actually kept his end. In King's Landing, Tywin Lannister received the message and sat in long silence. "If Robb Stark holds the Freys and the Riverlands," he said at last, "he may become a real threat." Back in the North, the people were beginning to hope again. Their king had done the impossible. He had chosen duty over desire. And with the Freys behind him, the war was no longer hopeless. But peace in Westeros is like snow in spring. It never lasts long. The days after the wedding felt calm, almost too calm. Robb Stark had returned to Riverrun with his new bride, Roslyn, Frey at his side. The River Lords bowed deeper now, knowing the alliance with the twins gave their king in the North more strength than ever. But not everyone was pleased. Whispers traveled faster than ravens, and behind every polite smile was a grudge waiting to bloom. Catelyn Stark tried to hide her unease. She had watched her son marry a girl he barely knew for the sake of strategy, just like her own marriage, to Ned Stark had once been. But something about the Freys still crawled under her skin. "They bent too easily," she told Robb one evening as they sat by the fire. "Lord Walder is not the sort to forgive without getting more than he gives." Robb nodded. "I don't trust him either, but we'll keep our eyes open. We gave him what he wanted. If he dares cross us now, he risks open war with the North." Even as he said it, Robb wasn't fully convinced. The war had dragged on longer than expected. Winter was creeping closer. Men were tired, supplies thin, and the Lannisters were far from beaten. But at least for now, the Freys were on his side. That bought time. Roslyn remained quiet, always observing. She walked the halls of River Run like a shadow, polite to the servants, respectful to her new mother-in-law, but distant. She wasn't like Talisa, and Robb knew better than to compare them. But late at night, when he looked at her across their bed, he saw the burden she carried too. She hadn't asked for this marriage either. One night, as snow fell outside the castle walls, Roslyn whispered, "My father said I'd bring House Frey honor by marrying a king, but I know what he meant. He wanted a chain on your neck." Robb turned to her, surprised. "Did he say that to you?" She nodded. "He said it to all of us, all my sisters. Whoever married you wasn't marrying a man. They were marrying power. Father doesn't care if I'm happy. He only cares if you dance to his tune." Robb's jaw clenched. "Then let's make sure we don't." At Harrenhal, Roose Bolton grew more restless. He had counted on the Red Wedding to destroy Robb, to win favor with Tywin Lannister and rise above the other northern lords. Now, with no massacre, no betrayal, and no Lannister reward, Roose saw his opportunity slipping. He sent a raven to the Dreadfort, calling for his bastard son, Ramsay. "It's time we find another path," he wrote. "The wolf still breathes, but he bleeds. We must help him bleed faster." Meanwhile, Tywin Lannister didn't waste time. The Starks had dodged his trap, but he had other tools. Letters were sent across Westeros. Promises, bribes, and threats poured into the ears of the disloyal. And in the capital, Queen Cersei whispered to her father, "If we can't kill the wolf at a wedding, we'll do it on the field." Back in River Run, Robb began planning his next move. He called his bannerman. Lord Karstark had forgiven him. Barely. The Glovers, the Mormonts, and even Lord Blackwood had answered his call. Robb's plan was bold. March west, strike the Lannisters at their home, and force them to negotiate peace or surrender. But there was danger in boldness. The west was Lannister territory, and Robb's army would be deep in enemy land. One mistake and it would all collapse. "If we don't move now," he said at council, "we'll die slowly. I'd rather take the fight to them." Roslyn approached, him after the meeting, pale. "Don't go," she said softly. "Something feels wrong. I've heard things from my brothers, strange things. Some of them say you're not meant to come back." Robb looked at her, surprised. "Do you believe them?" "I don't know what to believe. But I do know my father always plays a longer game than anyone sees. Just be careful." Robb kissed her forehead. "I always am." But caution wasn't always enough in a land soaked with ambition and blood. Spring never came for the Riverlands. The snow clung stubbornly to the trees and roads, slowing every movement, chilling every heart. Robb Stark led his army westward anyway. They crossed the Red Fork under grey skies, banners snapping in the wind, the direwolf still proud, still defiant. But this time, the war felt different. There was no Talisa riding beside him, laughing in the cold. His bannermen, though loyal, carried tired eyes and tight mouths. The war had gone on too long. Every soldier lost in the south, every village burned by Lannister men, every raven with bad news, they all weighed on his shoulders. At his side rode Lord Edmure Tully, now a more careful man after his humiliating capture months ago. And behind them, Roslyn's older brother, Sir Perwyn Frey, had joined the march, claiming to represent House Frey's loyalty. Robb didn't trust him. "You don't like him," Greywind growled low in his throat the first night the Freys joined the camp. The direwolf had taken a strong dislike to the Freys since the wedding, refusing to let them too close. Robb didn't argue with him. "Neither do I," he murmured. Messages arrived from scouts ahead. Lannister forces were gathering around the crag, one of their western strongholds. Word was that Sir Kevan Lannister commanded the defense, a steady hand. But even more troubling, Robb heard rumors of a second Lannister host on the move. No one had seen it, but tracks in the snow suggested another army moving south from the Twins. Could Lord Walder have betrayed us anyway? Catelyn asked in a letter. Robb wanted to believe no. He had kept his word. He had done the honorable thing. But in Westeros, honor was a blade with two edges, one you held and one they stabbed you with. One night, Robb called his closest men, Lord Greatjon Umber, Lord Roose Bolton, and Sir Brynden Blackfish. "If the Freys betray us now, it won't be a wedding feast, it'll be a battlefield," Robb said. "We need to watch every move they make." Greatjon slammed his cup on the table. If the old weasel tries anything, I'll rip his sons apart myself." Roose Bolton simply nodded. "I will keep my eyes open, as always." It was those quiet words that haunted Robb. He didn't trust Bolton, not since the news from Winterfell. The bastard Ramsay had burned it, they said. Bran and Rickon were missing, presumed dead, and Rose had offered no punishment for his son, but Robb had no time to fight two wars. The Lannisters were his enemy, for now Bolton was an ally, a thin one. They reached the crag by the second week of marching. Snow covered the hills. Lannister banners flew over the keep. Robb ordered a siege. The Freys stayed suspiciously quiet during preparations, and Robb kept Grey Wind near, trusting the wolves. Instincts over any lord's words. Then came the message, from Tywin Lannister himself. Delivered by a captured scout, the note was sealed in gold wax. Robb read it slowly, eyes narrowing with every line. "You have no allies, boy. You are surrounded. The Freys were never yours. The Boltons never will be. But you are still young, and your mother still breathes. Surrender, and you may yet see Winterfell again." Robb crushed the letter in his hand. "It's a bluff," Greatjon growled. "No," Robb said coldly. "It's a warning." That night, 2 Frey riders disappeared from camp. By morning, the Lannister forces had pulled back, drawing Robb in. Sir Kevan's host left behind just enough resistance to make it seem like they were still defending the crag, but it wasn't. "A retreat, it was bait. Pull the men back," Robb ordered, eyes sharp. "This isn't a siege. It's a trap. They're trying to draw us into the open." Only half of the bannermen agreed. Some whispered that Robb had lost his courage. Others looked to Roose Bolton for guidance, and Rose offered none. And far, to the south in the dungeons of Harrenhal, a captured northern scout whispered his final words to a faceless man in Lannister gold. "The boy king thinks honor keeps him safe," he spat, bloodied and broken. "But honor doesn't win wars." The faceless man smiled. "No, but betrayal does." The siege of the crag had turned into a waiting game, and waiting was a dangerous thing in war. Soldiers grew restless, loyalties wore thin, ravens came and went, but none brought the news Robb Stark wanted. No reinforcements, no victories elsewhere, just silence and whispers of betrayal. In the dead of night, Robb sat in his tent with a map stretched across the table. His fingers traced the hills and rivers of the Westerlands, but his mind was elsewhere. Grey Wind paced near the tent flap, growling low, ears perked. Something wasn't right. The wolf could feel it, and so could Robb. Roslyn had written him. Her letter was careful, almost too careful, as if she feared someone else might read it. "The twins are not what they seem. My brothers speak in riddles. My father has grown smug, as if he holds a secret no one else does. Please come home when you can. I feel something is coming." He folded the letter and stared into the flame of a single candle. "She knows something," he murmured. "But what?" At dawn, one of the outer patrols didn't return. Robb sent Sir Brynden Blackfish to investigate. The veteran returned hours later with blood on his cloak and fury in his voice. They were ambushed. Not by Lannisters. Freys. Robb's heart dropped. "How many dead?" 12. Their throats slit. No sigils left behind, but I know what I saw. Frey steel, Frey patterns. They've turned. Robb stood, his voice cold and calm. "Then it begins." He called his lords at once. In the command tent, tension crackled like lightning. "We're surrounded," said Lord Greatjon. "If the Freys and Lannisters have linked up, we're boxed in." "We must retreat," Roose Bolton said quietly. "Fall back toward the neck. We may find refuge in the bogs." "You'd like that, wouldn't you?" growled Greatjon. "Run home while the south burns?" Bolton didn't flinch. "We're not running. We're surviving. Or do you prefer to die here for a ruined castle?" Robb raised his hand. "Enough! We hold this position tonight." "We march east tomorrow, back toward the twins." Catelyn had warned him. Roslyn had warned him. He had been blind. That night, the winds howled louder than ever, as if trying to scream out the truth. In the darkness, Frey banners were quietly removed from the outer perimeter of the camp. Men vanished. Fires were left to burn out. It was the calm before a storm of steel. At midnight, Grey Wind burst from Robb's tent with a snarl. A shadow had crept too close, a Frey archer with a poisoned bolt now lying dead beneath the wolf's teeth. Robb didn't sleep after that. Neither did his men. By dawn, the Lannisters attacked. They didn't come from the front, where the siege had stood, but from the hills and trees surrounding the camp. Screams tore through the morning fog. Fires were lit, panic spreading like plague. The Freys struck from within, some posing as allies until the last moment, others setting fire to the supply wagons before turning on their fellow soldiers. It was chaos. Robb fought like a wolf himself, blade flashing, grey wind at his side ripping through men like paper, but for everyone he cut down two more rose. Roose Bolton stood atop the ridge, his armor clean, untouched. He didn't lift a sword. He didn't give an order. He just watched. By mid-morning, the camp was in ruins. The north held barely. Lord Greatjon led a furious counterattack that broke the Lannister flank. Sir Brynden rallied the Tully riders and carved a path through the Frey traitors. But the cost was heavy. Hundreds dead. Stores gone. Morale shattered. Robb survived. Bloodied, but breathing. His army limped east, leaving behind the dead and the broken. In the smoky haze, Roose Bolton approached the king. "A hard battle," he said with eerie calm. Robb looked at him with dead eyes. "You didn't fight." "No," Bolton said, "but I observed, and now I know where your true enemies lie." Robb didn't reply. He just stared and wondered if the worst betrayal still waited ahead. The march east was hell. What was left of Robb Stark's army dragged itself through frozen woods and ruined villages, moving like ghosts. The fire from the ambush still burned behind them. In the west, but ahead lay no safety, only the bitter cold and the haunting silence of betrayal. Half their food was gone. Horses limped or collapsed in the snow. And the men no longer looked like soldiers of the north, they looked like survivors. Robb rode silently at the front, grey wind beside him, ever alert. The great direwolf had taken a blade to the shoulder during the ambush, but still snarled at every sound, every shadow. He knew what Robb now knew too late. There was no such thing as peace in war. Even honor was a lie. Roslyn's last letter had been torn at the edges, like someone had tried to hide it. She had begged him to trust no one, not even her own blood. "The twins are a trap, Robb. If you return, don't walk in. Burn the bridge behind you." But where else could he go? The north was lost. Winterfell was ash. Riverrun stood alone. And the twins, cursed as they were, still guarded the only crossing large enough to move an army north. So Robb made a choice. He wouldn't go to the twins. He would go around them. He called a war council in the frost-covered ruins of an old hill fort. The wind screamed through the broken stone walls. Lord Greatjon stood with arms crossed, eyes still burning from the battle. Sir Brynden Blackfish sat sharpening his blade, silent as ever. Roose Bolton was last to arrive, calm as a corpse. "We don't go back to the twins," Robb said. "We don't give Walder Frey another chance to betray us. We ride for Seagard. From there we find ships. We sail north. We retake Winterfell." Roose raised a brow. "You would trust iron-born ships?" "I would trust the sea before I trust your friends at the twins." The accusation hung in the air. Roose didn't deny it. He didn't have to. "I swore loyalty to House Stark," he said flatly, "and I still serve for now." Robb turned to Greatjon. "Gather the scouts. I want the safest path to Seagard before nightfall." That night the dreams came again. Robb stood in the great hall of Winterfell. His father sat on the high seat, his face half-shadowed. Talisa stood beside him, eyes hollow. Roslyn was there, too weeping blood. And then from behind the walls came a sound, the dripping of water, slow and steady like blood falling from a sword. One drop, then another, then a flood. Robb awoke, gasping. Grey wind was growling low, pacing the edge of the camp. Something was wrong. Before dawn, a rider arrived, almost frozen to death, from the north. A Karstark scout, long thought lost. His face was pale as snow, lips blue, but he spoke one sentence before collapsing. "Bolton has taken the Dreadfort. He calls himself Warden of the North." Roose Bolton didn't deny it. When Robb confronted him, sword drawn, Bolton simply said, "I waited long enough. You are not your father. You are a boy chasing ghosts. I will not follow you into ruin. Grey. Wind lunged, but Bolton's guards blocked the wolf. Steel clanged, men shouted, and for one long second it nearly turned into slaughter, but Robb lowered his sword. Go then, he said coldly. Take your filth and leave. Roose Bolton bowed mockingly and walked into the snow with half his men. Another army lost. Now, only 2,000 men remained, cold and starving. Robb stood alone again, as alone as he had ever been, and when he looked to the stars that night, he didn't ask the gods for victory. He asked for vengeance. The wind coming off the Bay of Ice cut through flesh like knives. Robb Stark stood on the cliffs of Seagard, watching black sails roll in over grey waters. Iron-born ships, ugly things with twisted wood and cruel iron. But they had come. He didn't trust them, but he didn't have the luxury of trust anymore. They'll betray us, Sir Brynden said beside him, eyes sharp as ever. They might, Robb answered, but they want the North as much as I want to take it back. We use them, while they're useful, and if they turn, we deal with them. Greatjon Umber grunted approvingly. Let them try. I'll hang a Greyjoy from every mast before they get near your throne. Still, Robb's forces were weak. Less than 2,000 men, cold, tired, and half-starved. No lords, no houses with great banners, only the broken remnants of a kingdom. And yet Robb had never felt more ready. He wasn't marching for pride anymore. Not for honor. He was marching for home. The ironborn ships landed fast. Black waves splashed against the shore as Theon Greyjoy stepped onto the sand. Robb stared at him for a long, cold moment. I should kill you where you stand, Robb said. Voice low. You could, Theon replied, but you need me. He wasn't wrong. Theon had fled his family after they'd burned Winterfell. His uncle Euron had taken the Salt Throne and ruled with madness. Theon offered Robb ships, sailors, and a path through the eastern shorelines into the Neck. He wanted revenge against his own blood. Robb decided to give it to him. The march north was fast and brutal. The Ironborn flanked the shorelines while Robb led his army through the hidden trails and mountain passes. Frey scouts tried to block their way, but were slaughtered without mercy. Robb didn't offer peace. He didn't take prisoners. The war had stripped him of mercy. This was personal now. In the bitter frost of the Wolfswood, the battered army made camp for the last time. Winterfell was close. Smoke could be seen rising from its towers. Ramsay Snow had claimed it in the name of House Bolton. A bastard turned. Butcher, ruling a land soaked in Stark blood. Robb stood before his soldiers, no crown on his head, just a sword in his hand. We march to take back what is ours, he said. Not for glory, not for thrones, but for every brother we lost, for every home that burned, for every child hunted in the snow. They cheered, weak and hoarse, but it was real. And that night they lit fires that burned like stars. The battle of Winterfell was unlike any before. Ramsay had 5,000 men, walls and traps. He expected Robb to come from the east. Robb came from the north. He led his men through forgotten ice passages only the old foresters remembered. Snow fell like ash as wolves howled across the hills. Grey wind tore through Ramsay's sentries in silence. By dawn, Robb Stark was at the gates. The fighting was madness. Arrows rained from the battlements. Ironborn clashed with Bolton men in the snow. Fires lit the lower wards. Robb fought through it all like a ghost of the old gods, his sword never stopping. Grey wind always at his side. And then he found Ramsay. The bastard stood in the great hall laughing, crossbow in hand. You should have died at the twins, he said. I would have made you a cloak from your mother's skin. Robb didn't answer. He just charged. The fight was fast, brutal, bloody. Ramsay was quick, cruel, precise. But Robb was something else. He was driven. He was done losing. He broke Ramsay's wrist, then his knee, then his face. And when Ramsay lay on the stone floor gasping, Robb said only one word, for Winterfell, and drove his sword through his heart. By nightfall, the Stark banners flew again. Winterfell was back in the hands of wolves. Not a single raven was sent. No songs were sung, but word spread, carried by wind and whisper. The king in the north still lives. Catelyn returned weeks later, grey streaks in her hair, eyes harder than before. She stood beside her son at the gate. "You're not the same boy I sent to war," she said. "No," Robb replied. "He died on the road. I buried him next to honor." Roslyn arrived months later, her belly swelling with child. She said nothing, just placed Robb's hand over her stomach. For the first time in what felt like 100 winters, he smiled. Winter had come and the wolves had survived.